Good afternoon, everyone. Laiwanee, Tasmania, coldest ever. Temperatures registered colder than Antarctica at the Casey Station on the same day. Rare event, most significant snowfall since the 1970s. In Launceston, two atmospheric rivers pounding. Record snow, massive floods overtopping dams. One of the driest places in Australia, as well as hot. Turns into South Australia's North Pole snowfall. It's on a cycle. 1901, 1882, the snows have fallen in these same exact areas, but now the media needs to make it seem like it's a normal event. Tasmanian snow, just part of life in the Central Highlands. But what's not part of everyday life is the firewood shortage and the never seen before amounts of snow dumping across the Andes. Maybe it's because of the activity in our sun. Sunspots, solar cycle 25, off to an incredibly slow start. And the solar activity we're experiencing takes us back a full 100 years. Seems like a cycle we should be preparing our world for. Oh wait, you're just being distracted at the moment. News just released states that several VPNs that didn't have a no-log policy revealed the browsing activity and personal information of over 20 million users. Virtual Shield has a strict no-log policy, so your internet activity is truly private. Virtual Shield's network is fast, reliable, secure, and always available. Let me show you how it works. You can head over to virtualshield.com, and in the Download tab, I'm going to choose Firefox. And click Install Now to add the Virtual Shield add-on. It's just that easy. And get started with your free 30-day trial. Install it, click Connect. You'll see the shield turn from red to green. And you'll see how from my initial service provider I was able to even change my IP. Virtual Shield network protected. Due to the recent pandemic, Virtual Shield is offering its services for 50% off to help customers in need to protect themselves as they work from home. Available on Mac, Windows, iPhone, iPad, Android, Firefox, or Chrome. The link's in the description box below. And when I see fresh flowers used as the eyes for a snowman, you know something unusual has happened. Along with the two atmospheric rivers dumping record floods across Australia that's overtopping dams, record cold, record snows, winds, blue warnings, and everything in between. Hard to cover this one up across the continent down there. But this was preceded in Western Australia as the farmers celebrate heavy rainfalls. You know, they were in a drought situation out there, so any rain was welcomed. That's been 3 atmospheric rivers in 3 weeks. But the vicious cold snap brings record cold temperatures. And when you say record cold temperature, okay, we hear this a lot, but in Laiwanee, Tasmania, that's the coldest temperature ever recorded since records began ever in the entire state. Laiwanee 14.2 degrees Celsius below zero, breaking the old record 1983. What's interesting in itself is Casey Station in Antarctica was warmer in the winter than this location in Tasmania. And the Weather Bureau down there, I don't think it would happen very often at all. Well, it's at least the first time since the country was founded as a country. And other headlines: Arctic blast brings snow to Tasmania, cutting power, never seen snow like this, cold blankets the entire island and the snows as well. So a look at the Highlands National Park area with some lakes, but this snowfall extended all the way down to the beaches and the coastal roads, which is rare according to the Bureau of Meteorology, and the most significant snowfall since the late 1970s. Around Launceston, and I know you want to see the Tasmanian devil. Cute little thing, I'll wide it out. These creatures are winter ready. Now beyond Laiwanee, coastal areas, snows, other temperature stations reported record cold as well. Strahan and Wynyard and Launceston. But in the northern part of the island, even Hobart saw snow, which is a head shaker in itself. But there were accumulations to the point where images like these in Launceston, you have to go back 3 generations before people would talk about seeing something like this. Nobody in this current generation or the previous generation has seen this type of snow in the northern part of the island at this low altitude. And headlines, only in Tassie would you see somebody in shorts skiing in the winter down Main Street. Shout out to the Launceston Football Club. Out there training in the snow, yeah. And also the Bureau of Meteorology feed there for Tasmania and South Australia and New South Wales, as well as Bureau of Meteorology for Australia itself, talking about how low altitude these events are occurring all the way down coastal, starting up Mount Field National Park, winding its way all the way to the coastal road. Not even 300 feet above sea level getting snows. But when you do look through social media, it's just image after image after image of snow-covered houses, cities, streets, plants, whatever it is. They're like, wow, we've never seen anything like this before. It's a plethora of those type of beautiful images, by the way. Tasmania, stunning area. And right on cue, ding, 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 ding. Oh, countermeasures. Tasmania, snow is just a part of life in the central area. Well, they had to make it pretend like. So what percentage of the people will read this and go, oh, snow's normal? And they'll never think about the other areas that are real low altitude. They'll just brush this off and go, oh, it does snow. So what percentage do you think of the populace would read this headline and associate it with this event and go, oh, yeah, well, that snow's normal? Even though it's the first time we've ever seen it and I had to talk to my grandparents to see it, but it's just normal. You know, there's a percentage of people that will believe that headline. And they're going to keep coming at it. Once it starts, I'm trying to follow up to see exactly how many of these counter-argument, it's a normal thing kind of headlines are coming out. What they're not talking about is the causation of the solar activity or lack thereof. Solar cycle 25 is far below what the experts predicted it would be. David Dubine of Adapt 2030 prediction for solar cycle 25 is 50 sunspots on average or under. The experts out there are all saying 100, 125. In my opinion, there's no way. We're heading into a grand solar minimum. Even if it is solar cycle 26 when it reaches its coldest part of it, we're not going above 50 average sunspots. Because when you look at the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of solar activity, we're coming into the red on the right, into this modern grand solar minimum, termed the Eddy grand solar minimum. 36 of these 11-year cycles equals a grand solar minimum cycle. We're heading back into that. And I do want to take you on a little history jaunt here. So look at the year 1900, and if you come back, you see the 1880s there, right around Gleisberg minimum. So keep that in mind, like the 1880 to 1910 era, really low solar activity matching with what we are seeing today. 1882, snow, hail, freezing rain, massive event across Melbourne. These lithographs are worth a trip into the website itself. I've linked everything in the description box below so you can chase down the dozens of links I went through to get this info. The lithographs are excellent. It comes back and talks about the biggest snowstorms recorded of their era. And again, 1901 falls right in the middle of that centennial minimum. South Australia and southern Queensland, snow. We come back into 1849, biggest snow event in Melbourne since European settlement. So we do have to go back into these longer durations of time to find these cycles starting to repeat. Now the outlier here for me is the 1951 event, but the stunning image here, the sleek automobile design along with the snow giving the contours on the tree. This is just a beautiful photo at any time area that you were to look at it. But 1951 there was higher solar activity. It's the only one that sticks out like this with not being in a low. So Australia continues. Snowy snap, Southern Australia. It's such an all-encompassing event. They had to record it everywhere in the media. There's nobody that wasn't really affected by this. It's such an all-nation encompassing event. So the record low temperatures that are now officially in the books, starting to be categorized, officially, quote-unquote, in the books. Bureau of Meteorology South Australia coming out. They're starting to catalog them slowly. There's even more and more coming out. And I think through the next few days, finally get a final tally, and I'll do an update video on that. But for now, they're really slow putting out the official records. You know, these temperature stations are banging off, bam, record cold, record cold, record cold. And the Bureau of Meteorology says, well, we need to double check it and make sure it is. I understand about checking the data and making sure there's no malfunctioning equipment at your station. All the stations are pinging on record cold in an area to delay the results so it doesn't seem, you know, if you put this information out 2 weeks later, like, oh, this record cold, it's not going to seem as drastic if you put it now. If you had 200 record cold temperature station readings, that's way big than dripping it out over 2 weeks. You see the psychology in that? So speaking of maps here, pinging on the red dot there, you can see New South Wales over to the east, South Australia right there in the center, and then West Australia would be off to the west there. But we're looking at Fiddler's Ridges National Park. What it's known for? Hot, dry, one of the driest places in Australia, and one of the most epic places to go hiking. This has been on my bucket list for a while. I've really wanted to get up there in the Fiddler's Ranges and explore it. It's such a sacred spot, not only for the indigenous Aboriginal peoples of Australia, but when you look at this thing, it just draws you in. But with all the things happening right now, it seems like international travel's off. But an FYI out there for any of you living in Australia, the Aboriginal peoples are going to survive through this grand solar minimum just fine. They've been through, what, 200 of these so far in the 80,000 years that academia will give them credit for inhabiting this area. These spinifex seeds, you can grind them into flour. They have the ancient ways, they understand the knowledge. They're going to be the ones that can teach you how to stay alive during this time. So how many of you in Australia would just go walking right by that bush, right by those seeds, and not even know that they could be ground into flour to be used to make food? They'll be the last ones standing, along with the military who's gotten their warehouses stocked full of long-term food storage, but they're going to live off the land with healthy, nutritious foods. If I had extra spare weekends, I would definitely be going out and asking to learn what they could teach me. Rare snowfall in South Australia's Fiddler's Ridges. And again, this has been on my bucket list, so every time I see this, I like looking at the aerial photos. But when the headline, "Snow turns Fiddler's Ridges into South Australia's North Pole," that's a little bit strange. And another headline that might raise an eyebrow: firewood in short supply due to cold snap, and all people stockpiling because of the bug. And further down in the article, the firewood suppliers state that customers will have to accept the fact that they will have to look for alternative wood for firewood for the rest of the season or do without. This has spurred a black market of firewood harvesting in the night. Now, along the highways, what people are doing in the more remote areas, they're just pulling up with trailers in the middle of the night, chainsawing down trees, cutting off the prime parts, leaving the rest of the tree there, and then damaging the plants on the sides of the roadside, dragging everything through to the point where they're like, this is ecological devastation. How many firewood rustlers are out here? So now what they have to do is send law enforcement up and down these rural roads at night to look for timber rustlers. It's gotten to that point, where people see such an advantage of cutting down trees illegally and then reselling them somewhere for firewood. And staying in the southern hemisphere here, never seen any snow totals like this. 13 feet in 2 weeks. Andes Mountains, Argentina and Chile. Does seem to be a southern hemisphere thing, along with all the record cold that happened in South Africa as well. I talk more about this on my climate preparedness channel, Adapt 2030 on Patreon. These events that are occurring in the southern hemisphere, this grand solar minimum, southern hemisphere leads the northern hemisphere by 1 season. So when we look there and we see all these extreme cold events far outside the 100-year norm, it portends that this northern hemisphere winter is going to be extreme as well, because we've already seen the summer snows in Beijing, the summer snows in Alberta, Canada. Greenland has stopped melting a full month earlier and gained 4 gigatons of ice over the last few days. The summer snows across Russia, I know they had the 100-degree spike in heat for a few hours that made the world news headlines. What happened with the follow-up when it snowed in that same region a week later? So there's already snows happening in the northern hemisphere during summer. So as we roll in, you'd probably start to see some records being broken. And since some things are matching up here with the 1970s, I'm only going to say, look at what happened to Buffalo, New York. And please feel free to leave a comment in the description box below. Start a conversation. See what others are thinking about these anomalies happening across the southern hemisphere. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video, and I will see you next time.